I was sitting at the kitchen table in our little bungalow in Raleigh when the message came through. It was a Tuesday morning in early March, the kind of gray day where the light through the blinds makes everything look a little washed out. I had my laptop open, coffee going cold beside me, and I was half-heartedly tweaking a campaign timeline for the Lang account. My phone buzzed with a Slack notification from Tiffany Reyes. I almost ignored it. Tiffany and I had been on the same project team for 2 years, and lately her messages had taken on this fake sweet tone that set my teeth on edge. The notification said it was a forwarded thread. I tapped it without thinking. What loaded on my screen made the air in the room feel thinner. It was a private group chat between Tiffany and Cheryl Donovan, our boss. Tiffany had apparently meant to forward something else, or maybe she hit the wrong button in a hurry. Either way, the whole chain was right there in front of me. Cheryl had written, "We need to get ahead of this before the Q2 reviews. Lauren's been pushing back on every revision. Frame it as her being difficult to manage so the promotion conversation stays off the table. I'll handle the client side. You just keep feeding me the examples." Tiffany had replied with a string of laughing emojis and then on it. She'll never see it coming. She always thinks she's the reasonable one. I read it twice, then a third time. My first thought was not anger. It was this cold, sarcastic little voice in my head that said, "Of course, classic Cheryl. Make the problem the person who notices the problem." I had worked for Cheryl Donovan for 4.5 years. In that time, she had told me I was overreacting at least once a month. When I pointed out that my name kept disappearing from client decks she had presented as her own work, she laughed like I was being dramatic and said I needed to learn how to be a team player. When I stayed late 3 nights in a row to fix a campaign that had gone sideways because she changed the brief at the last minute, she sent me a message the next morning that read, "Try not to make everything a crisis, Lauren. It's exhausting for everyone." I had swallowed it every single time because the alternative was believing that my boss was deliberately chipping away at me, and who wants to believe that? Now, the proof was sitting in my phone like it had always been there waiting. I took screenshots. I emailed them to myself from my personal account. I even forwarded the entire thread to a new folder I created called Just In Case. The whole time, my hands stayed steady. That surprised me. I thought they would shake. Instead, I felt this bitter clarity settle in the kind that comes when something you have been pretending not to see finally stops pretending back. Brandon walked in from the garage with his work bag over his shoulder. He took one look at my face and set the bag down. "Bad morning already?" he asked. I turned the phone so he could see the screenshots. He read them without saying anything for a long minute. When he looked up, his expression had gone flat in that quiet way he gets when he is furious on my behalf. "You're not going in today," he said. "I have to," I answered. "If I don't show up, it gives them exactly what they want. I need to see how far this has already gone." He didn't argue. He just poured me a fresh cup of coffee and sat across from me while I finished saving everything. We didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say yet. The message had done the talking for us. I drove to the office with the screenshots still open on my phone, glancing at them at red lights like they might disappear if I looked away too long. The building was one of those renovated warehouses near downtown Raleigh, with exposed brick and too many plants in the lobby. I used to like it. Now it felt like walking into a room where everyone already knew the ending of a joke I hadn't heard. Tiffany was at her desk when I walked past. She looked up, smiled that same bright smile she always gave me, and said, "Hey Lauren, did you see the updated brief from Cheryl? She wants it by end of day." I smiled back. It felt like stretching a muscle I hadn't used in weeks. "Got it. Thanks for the heads up." She had no idea I had seen the thread. That was the only small advantage I still held. I spent the morning pretending to work while I actually went back through every project folder I could access. I started making my own timeline. Every time Cheryl had taken credit in a client call, every time she had scheduled a last-minute meeting that forced me to cancel plans with Brandon, every performance review where she wrote needs to be more collaborative right after I had pushed back on a decision that would have hurt the client. The pattern was so obvious once I stopped trying to explain it away. She had been building a case against me for years, one quiet conversation and one deleted credit at a time. Around 11, my desk phone rang. It was Cheryl's assistant asking me to come to her office. I took my laptop and the folder of screenshots with me, not because I planned to use them yet, because holding something solid made me feel less like the floor was tilting. Cheryl's office door was open. She was behind her desk in one of her usual crisp blazers, hair-perfect expression, pleasant in that way that never reached her eyes. She gestured for me to sit. "Close the door, would you?" she said. I did. I sat. I waited. I wanted to check in about the Lang campaign she started. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. Derek Lang mentioned in his last email that he felt some of the revisions were getting a little scattered. I told him we were tightening things up internally. "I just need to know you're on the same page with me on this." There it was, the setup. She was already planting the story that I was the one making things scattered. I kept my tone even. I sent the last round of revisions exactly as we discussed in the Tuesday meeting. If Derek has concerns, I'd be happy to hop on a call with him and walk through the rationale. Cheryl's smile tightened at the edges. "That's exactly what I mean, Lauren. You're very good at the details, but sometimes you get so focused on being right that you miss the bigger picture of how the client experiences us as a team. I've mentioned this before. It's starting to become a pattern. I felt the old familiar heat rise in my chest, the one that always came right before she told me I was overreacting. This time, I didn't swallow it down. I've been keeping notes on every revision round," I said. "I can pull them up right now if that would help." For a second, her eyes flicked to my laptop. Then, the pleasant mask slid back into place. "No need to get defensive," she said. "I'm just giving you feedback. You know how much I value direct communication." Direct communication. That was rich coming from the woman who had spent 4 years telling me I was too sensitive every time I noticed she was rewriting history. I left her office with my stomach in knots and my hands finally starting to shake. I went straight to the small conference room at the end of the hall, the one nobody ever booked, and closed the door behind me. I sat there for 20 minutes, just breathing and staring at the screenshots on my phone. That was when the second message came in. This one was from Derek Lang, the client whose account had apparently become the battleground. It was short. "Lauren, got a minute? I saw something in the last email chain that didn't sit right. Can we talk off the record?" I stared at it. Derek Lang was not the type to send vague messages. He was direct to the point of bluntness. If he was asking for an off-the-record conversation, he had seen something. I replied that I could call him after lunch. When I walked back to my desk, Tiffany was gone. Her monitor was dark. On my own screen, a new Slack message had appeared from Cheryl. "Quick sync in my office at 2, just the two of us. I think we need to clear the air before this becomes a bigger thing." I didn't answer right away. I forwarded the message from Derek Lang to my personal email too. Then I opened a new document and started typing everything I could remember from the last 6 months. Every conversation. Every time Cheryl had said, "You're overreacting." Every time Tiffany had smiled at me in the hallway and then disappeared into Cheryl's office 5 minutes later. By the time I finished, it was almost 1:30. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Brandon. "You okay?" he had written. I typed back, "Not even a little. But I'm done pretending I am." I hit send, locked my computer, and stood up. My legs felt unsteady, but my mind was suddenly very clear. I had spent years letting Cheryl Donovan tell me the version of reality that kept her comfortable. I had let Tiffany play both sides because it was easier than admitting I had no real allies in that office. The forwarded message had ripped the polite fiction apart. Now I had a choice. I could keep swallowing it until they found a way to push me out quietly, or I could stop playing the part they had written for me. I walked back toward Cheryl's office with my laptop under my arm and the screenshots in a folder on my desktop. I didn't know exactly what I was going to say yet. I only knew that whatever came next, I was finished being the one who was always overreacting. I walked into Cheryl's office at exactly 2 o'clock. She was already seated behind her desk, hands folded like she was about to lead a prayer meeting. The door clicked shut behind me, and the sound felt louder than it should have. "Sit," she said, and I did. She launched straight into it. "I've been reviewing the Lang account notes, and I have to be honest with you, Lauren. There's a pattern here that concerns me. You're pushing back on direction in ways that are starting to look like resistance rather than collaboration. Derek has noticed, I've noticed, this isn't the first time we've had this conversation." I let the words sit for a second. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the revision log I had kept since January. "I have every change documented," I said. Every time the brief shifted after I had already executed it. Every time I asked for clarification and got told to just make it work. If the client is confused, it's because the goalposts kept moving. Cheryl's expression didn't change, but her voice dropped into that soft, concerned register she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're framing normal feedback as some kind of sabotage. It's becoming difficult to manage. I need you to trust the process instead of questioning every decision. I almost laughed. The bitter taste of it sat at the back of my throat. 4 years of being told I was overreacting, and now the proof was in my phone, and she was still using the same line. I closed the laptop without showing her the screenshots. I hear you, I said because anything else would have come out too sharp. I'll make sure the next round reflects the direction you want. She smiled like we had reached an understanding. Good. I knew we could get on the same page. I left her office feeling like I had swallowed something rotten. Tiffany was at the printer when I walked past. She didn't look up. That told me everything I needed to know about how fast the story was already spreading. Back at my desk, I opened the message from Derek Lang again. I typed a quick reply that I was free after 4 and sent it before I could talk myself out of it. Then I texted Brandon one line, "Meeting with Cheryl was exactly what you'd expect. I'll call you on the way home." The afternoon dragged. I kept my head down and worked on the revised deck, but my mind kept circling back to the forwarded thread. Every time someone walked past my desk, I wondered if they had already heard the version where I was the difficult one. By 4:15, my phone lit up with Derek's name. I stepped into the small conference room again and closed the door. "Lauren," Derek said when he picked up. His voice was steady, but there was an edge underneath it. I don't usually get involved in internal stuff, but I saw an email chain this morning that I wasn't supposed to see. It was forwarded to me by mistake from someone in your office. It had your name all over it." My stomach dropped. "What did it say?" There was a pause. "Your boss was talking to another woman on your team about how you were creating friction and how they needed to start documenting issues so it would be easier to manage you out before the promotion cycle. She specifically said the Lang account was a good place to start because the client was already asking questions. I don't know what's going on over there, but that didn't read like normal project management to me." I sat down hard in one of the chairs. The room felt smaller than it had an hour earlier. "Did you save it?" I asked. "I forwarded it to myself before it disappeared," he said. "I can send it to you if you want. I figured you should know what's being said when you're not in the room." I thanked him. My voice sounded distant, even to me. After we hung up, I sat there for a long minute with my hands flat on the table. Derek Lang, the client I had spent months trying to keep happy, had just handed me the second piece of evidence in one day. The same client Cheryl had used as the excuse to call me in for a talk. I forwarded the email Derek sent me to my personal account and saved it in the same folder as the screenshots. Then I opened a new message to Vanessa Holt. Vanessa had been on my side since I started here. She was the only person in the office who had ever pulled me aside and said Cheryl's management style was rough on people who actually did the work. I typed, "Can we grab coffee tomorrow morning before the stand-up something's going on, and I need another set of eyes on it." She replied within 2 minutes, "My calendar's clear until 9:30. Meet you in the lobby at 8:15. That small yes felt like the first solid ground I had stood on all day. I stayed until after 6, finishing the revised deck and sending it to Cheryl with a note that said exactly what she had asked for. No extra commentary, no questions. Then I packed up and walked out without saying goodbye to anyone. In the car, I called Brandon. He answered on the first ring. She tried the same script I told him. Overreacting, not a team player. Then Derek Lang called. He saw an email where Cheryl and Tiffany were planning how to document me out of a promotion using his account as the example. Brandon was quiet for a second. "You okay?" "No," I said. The word came out flatter than I meant it to. "I'm not okay. I've been swallowing this for years, and I kept telling myself it was just how she was, that I was too sensitive. Now 2 different people have shown me the same thing in one day, and I feel like an idiot for not seeing it sooner." "You're not an idiot," he said. "You trusted the person who was supposed to have your back. That's not the same thing." I drove the rest of the way home with the phone on speaker. We didn't solve anything. He just stayed on the line while I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes after I parked staring at the garage door. When I finally went inside, I poured a glass of water and stood at the kitchen counter looking at nothing. The house was quiet. Brandon was still at his own office. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder again. The screenshots, Derek's email, my own revision log. It was all there, neat and undeniable. And still I felt this heavy, bitter weight in my chest that had nothing to do with the evidence and everything to do with how long I had let it happen. I thought about all the times I had stayed late, all the weekends I had answered emails at midnight, all the times I had smiled through another, "You're overreacting" comment because I didn't want to be the problem. Cheryl had been building this version of me for years. Tiffany had helped, and I had helped too, by never pushing back hard enough to make them uncomfortable. My phone buzzed on the counter. A new Slack message from Tiffany. "Hey, just checking in. You seemed off this afternoon. Everything okay?" I stared at it. The same woman who had written "she'll never see it coming" was now pretending to care if I was okay. The sarcasm rose up so fast, I almost typed something I would have regretted. Instead, I closed the app without answering. I opened a text to Vanessa instead. 8:15, still good, I have more than I thought. She replied almost immediately. "I'll be there. Bring whatever you have." I set the phone down and leaned against the counter. My hands were steady again, but something inside me had shifted. It wasn't anger anymore. It was colder than that. I had spent 4.5 years trying to be the reasonable one, the one who didn't make waves, the one who could take feedback without making it a thing. And the whole time, the people I worked for had been writing a different story behind my back. Tomorrow, I would show Vanessa. I would keep gathering what I needed. But right now, standing in my own kitchen with the evidence sitting in a folder on my laptop, I felt the first real crack in the version of myself I had been holding together for years. I wasn't overreacting. I had been right to notice, and that realization didn't feel like relief. It felt like the floor dropping out from under something I had called a career. The next morning, I met Vanessa in the lobby at 8:15 exactly. She took one look at my face and steered us toward the small coffee shop across the street instead of the office kitchen. We sat at a corner table with our backs to the window. I slid my phone across to her and let her read the screenshots and Derek Lang's email without saying a word. When she finished, she pushed the phone back and leaned in. "This is bad, Lauren. This isn't just Cheryl being difficult. This is them building a case to push you out." "I know," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I'm going to HR today. I want it on record." Vanessa hesitated. "Pamela's okay, but she's careful. Don't expect her to ride in like a hero. Just protect yourself while you do it." I nodded. We finished our coffee in silence. When we walked back into the building, I felt like I was stepping onto a stage where everyone already knew their lines except me. At 9:30, I knocked on Pamela Voss's door in HR. She invited me in with that professional half-smile she used for every conversation. I sat down and told her calmly, and without raising my voice, that I had evidence my direct manager and a teammate were coordinating to damage my reputation and block my advancement. I showed her the forwarded thread and Derek's email. I kept my tone flat and factual, the way I had learned to do in every performance review. Pamela read everything. When she looked up, her expression was careful. "This is concerning," she said. "I'll need to speak with Cheryl and get her side. In the meantime, I want to make sure you feel supported. Have you considered whether this might be a communication issue that could be resolved through mediation?" I felt the bitter laugh rise and swallowed it. I've been hearing that I'm overreacting for 4.5 years. The evidence shows they were planning to document me out, using a client account as cover. I'm not asking for mediation. I'm asking for this to be investigated. She promised to follow up within 48 hours. I left her office knowing exactly how this would go. Cheryl would spin it as a personality conflict. Tiffany would play innocent. And I would be the one labeled difficult for bringing receipts. By lunchtime, the whole floor felt different. People who usually stopped to chat walked past my desk with quick nods. Tiffany hadn't looked at me once. At 2 o'clock, Cheryl sent a calendar invite for a team sync at 3. No agenda. Just the four of us, me, Cheryl, Tiffany, and Marcus Ellison, the VP, who rarely joined project meetings. I showed up on time. Cheryl started the meeting by thanking everyone for their hard work on the Lang campaign, and then turned to me with that same pleasant mask. "Lauren, I wanted to give you space to share any concerns you've been having," she said. "I know yesterday's conversation was tense. I want us to move forward as a team." I looked at her for a long second. Then I looked at Tiffany, who was suddenly very interested in her notebook. Then at Marcus, who was watching with the neutral expression of someone who already knew this meeting had been arranged for a reason. "I don't have concerns," I said. "I have documentation. I've kept records of every brief change, every credit that disappeared, and every time I was told I was overreacting when I raised issues. Yesterday, I received confirmation from the client himself. that he saw an internal thread discussing how to manage me out. So, no, I don't want to move forward as a team. I want to know what HR is going to do with the evidence I gave them this morning. The room went quiet. Cheryl's smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. I think we're getting a little dramatic here, she said. This sounds like a misunderstanding that's been blown out of proportion. Marcus cleared his throat. Pamela mentioned you brought something to her. We'll let that process play out. For now, let's keep the focus on the work. I stood up. The work has been the only thing I've focused on for years. I'm done pretending the rest of it doesn't exist. I walked out before anyone could respond. My hands were shaking, but my steps were steady. I went straight to the bathroom at the end of the hall, locked myself in a stall, and finally let the tears come. They weren't quiet. They were the kind that made my shoulders jerk and my breath catch. I pressed both hands over my mouth so no one would hear. 4.5 years of swallowing, every year overreacting, every rewritten deck, every late-night fix, every fake smile from Tiffany, it all came out in that stall. I had thought I was being professional. I had thought I was being resilient. I had been helping them write the story that I was the problem. When I finally stopped crying, I washed my face and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red and my mascara was gone, but something in my face had settled. I wasn't going to cry in this building again. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and started drafting my resignation letter. I kept it short. 2 paragraphs, no explanations, no accusations, just the date I would be leaving, and a note that I would complete any outstanding deliverables by the end of the week. I sent it to Cheryl, Pamela, and Marcus at the same time. Then I texted Brandon I resigned. I'll explain when I get home. He replied within a minute, I'm proud of you. Come home whenever you're ready. I packed the few personal things I kept at my desk into a small box. Nobody stopped me. Tiffany had disappeared somewhere. Cheryl's door stayed closed. I walked out of the building at 4:30 with the box under my arm and didn't look back. The drive home was quiet. I didn't play music. I just let the silence sit. When I pulled into the driveway, Brandon was already there. He met me at the door and took the box without asking. We sat at the kitchen table the same way we had the morning I saw the forwarded message. I don't feel relieved, I told him. I thought I would. I thought walking away would feel like winning. It just feels like I finally stopped letting them decide who I was. He reached across the table and held my hand. You chose yourself. That's allowed to hurt and still be the right thing. I nodded. The tears came again, but these were quieter. I let them fall. I had spent years being the person who fixed everything, who stayed late, who smiled through the gaslighting because I didn't want to be difficult. Cheryl had counted on that. Tiffany had counted on that. And I had given it to them for free. Now the job was gone. The version of myself I had performed for that office was gone too. I didn't know what came next yet. I only knew that for the first time in a long time, the story being told about me was one I had chosen to end. I looked at Brandon and managed a small, tired smile. I'm going to take a few days, then I'll start looking. But I'm not walking into another place where I have to prove I'm not difficult just to do my job. That sounds like a plan, he said. We sat there until the light through the kitchen window turned soft and orange. I didn't have a victory speech or a dramatic exit story to tell anyone. I had a resignation letter, a folder of evidence that HR was probably already minimizing, and the knowledge that I had finally stopped participating in my own erasure. That was enough for now. It had to be. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever stayed somewhere too long because you kept telling yourself you were overreacting, I hope you know you're allowed to stop. Choosing yourself doesn't always come with applause or justice. Sometimes it just comes with a quiet kitchen table and the decision to walk away. That's still courage. If this story hit close to home, I'd really like to know what would you have done when that first message showed up on your screen.